So filming in my small woodshop has been a real pain so far. I think it's time to finally build a decent camera stand. I have been using this Hamastar 63 tripod for many years now. It's not a bad tripod, but adjusting the legs is very time consuming, and I already had to repair it a few times. What I do like about this tripod is the head part, so this part will be recycled into the new project. A few years ago, Jay Bates made a nice video about his studio camera stand, and I really like the idea of the concrete bucket, so instead of reinventing the wheel, I will be integrating that feature as well. I want the footprint to be as small as possible, so I used a less wide but strong bucket. I've cut 4 pieces of lumber at the same length, pre-drilled some screw holes and then screwed them together like this. I then added a piece of OSB to reinforce the frame and cut out a hole for the bucket with a jigsaw. The corners were then rounded off with a belt sander. My garage floor is extremely uneven, so I added only 3 casters instead of 4. This will make the stand a bit wobbly when rolling around, but it will also be more stable when set up in place. The bucket was squeezed in with a hammer and won't be able to come out when concrete is added. Next, I mixed the concrete in the tub. A fence post was placed in the center and the concrete was added to the bucket. I used a trowel to smooth out the top surface and a sponge to clean up the edges. Next, I cut 2 pieces of wood that will hold the camera in place. A hole saw with a slightly smaller diameter than the fence post was used to cut out the hole. In order to clamp these pieces around the post, the hole needs to be slightly oval, so I removed some material left and right with a curved tooth file. Then the surface was smoothed out with sandpaper. I will use a T-bolt with a star knob to tighten the camera in place. For this I marked the outline of the T-bolt and routed this out by hand. I started shaping the pieces roughly with a handsaw and added some curves with WD-40. And a belt sander was used to shape the curves. And some more roughing out with the handsaw and finishing up with the belt sander. I used a round over bit to smooth out the corners and some final sanding was done by hand. Then I added another bolt on the opposite side and a Forstner bit was used to cut out a counterbore hole for the bolt and nut. Two layers of varnish were then brushed on to protect the wood. Next I'll have to make an adapter to connect the old tripod head with the new stand. For this I will be using a 73 and 35mm hole saw. A leftover piece of plywood was then cut out, forming the base of the adapter. Next I used a table saw to cut out some rough beechwood to process on the lathe. And I reached for my handsaw again because I like to save the rest of that board to make some small wood-turn bowls in the future. Then I marked the centers and we're ready to do some wood turning. One of my future projects will be a dedicated wood lathe stand, but in the meantime I'll have to use the lathe on my workbench, but I have to clamp that down next time. Here I'm using some smaller chisels to create the right shape. Some final sanding was done and then the part is ready to cut out. Then the part is cut to length, and those bottom lines are added to roughen up the glue surface. And this is how the part will fit in the tripod head. Next I drill 3 holes in the arc reactor. Wood glue was added to both parts. And then I stuck out my finger to ruin up the glue shot. And again 2 coats of varnish were brushed on. All parts are ready now, so we can start the assembly. The bolts were put in place, and yes, there's a little bit of tear out on the inside, but that won't be visible afterwards. I need a pivot on the other side of the clamping knob, so I added a few washers. Then the 2 halves were put together and the nuts were fitted. And here you can see how the clamping works. Next I drilled some pilot holes and screwed the adapter in place. Then the piece is ready to slide onto the fence post. The tripod head is put over the adapter we made earlier. I cut out a small washer from a piece of PVC wall panel, which will keep the tripod head in place. So now I can turn the camera in all directions. By tightening or loosening the lever, I can point the camera up and down. The knob on the side can be used to fix the horizontal position. And of course the height can be adjusted by sliding up and down the fence post. And the camera I'm using is a Canon EOS 1100D, which already served me for 9 years. And so now I finally have a sturdy camera stand with only a small footprint in the shop. I can even set up the camera to record some overhead shots, which is something I couldn't do very easily in the past. The next few shots gives you an idea of the height range. I designed some plans in case anyone would like to build something similar, but keep in mind you'll probably have to adapt it to your local available materials. Again, I put metric in black and imperial in blue. So I'm pretty happy how it turned out. It will definitely save me both time and also frustration when recording future videos. So I hope you liked the video, many thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.